Hello, this short video is about a particular guitar playing challenge. My name's David Charles Rowan. Um, uh, I do a lot of different things. I write songs, I'm a Stonehenge tour guide, I'm an astrologer, but I'm also a trainer and teacher of neuroholistic therapy. And when I was doing my uh, last last but one master's degree in psychosocial studies, I was researching brain anatomy and agency and volition in the brain. And one of the books I came across was this thing. It's called The Actor's Brain by Sean Spence. Excellent book, The Actor's Brain. And it talks about the neurobiology of volition or agency, how in command of ourselves we actually are in terms of our conscious thinking, and how much the non-conscious, if you think of, I guess, brain function that operates below the threshold of conscious awareness, to what extent that determines or even predetermines what actions or behaviors we may be able to do and the kind of responses we have when we meet phenomena. And there's a section in the book on dyspraxia. Now, I have three autistic conditions, and one of those is dyspraxia. And in the book, he describes how a person with ideomotor dyspraxia is unable to, for example, copy certain actions if another person shows them something. So if a person kind of waves their hand in a particular way, a person with dyspraxia might not be able to copy that. Their hand will go in a different direction. Or sometimes there are certain shapes that the hands cannot perform, which means that they can't pick up a cup of tea because their hand can't perform the shape or have the intensity of grip required to lift the cup. So I have a life that's heavily challenged with things like packaging. Um, just trying to open things. I remember talking to a GP a long while ago who looked alarmed when I told him that in lectures, if I wanted a drink of water in a lecture, I had to open the plastic bottle with my teeth because I couldn't open bottles of water with my hands. You know? All of this kind of makes playing a guitar rather challenging. I was telling a friend of mine that if, say, for example, if I'm sometimes peeling a potato, instead of the potato peeler going over the potato, it shoots across and goes over the top of my thumb. And I end up peeling my thumb instead of peeling a potato, which is why now I very rarely bother with those because it's quite dangerous. I've kind of learned to navigate life without ironing, either by paying someone to do ironing for me or just not bothering, because it's too dangerous for me to kind of have a hot iron in one hand and go close to my hand with that. The risk is too great. So it does mean that a lot of things in life I have to kind of adapt how I do things so that I can kind of function without putting myself in danger, really. It's quite a challenge. And one of those challenges, of course, is playing a guitar. It's one thing to remember notes and to know what you're going to do, but it's another thing when your hands sometimes go into different places than the ones that you're telling yourself for them to go to. Like when I was telling my friend about the potato, he said, is it because you can't tell the difference between you can't see where the potato ends and your hand begins? I said, no, I can completely see where the potato ends and where my hands begin. And I'm telling my hand to go this way, but it just involuntarily shoots across that way. And that happens when I'm playing a guitar as well. If I want to kind of play an A minor, the imagery in my head is that my hands are going to go into that familiar kind of A minor shape. But instead of doing that, it goes somewhere else, which is very inconvenient if you're going to play something that's even remotely melodic to whoever's listening or to yourself, right? And it makes playing guitar live quite a challenge, you know, because not only are you going to perform, that's a challenge in itself. There's, you know, a lot of people have performance anxiety, that you're going to kind of do some kind of thing in front of people who are going to evaluate, assess, and judge, you know, in their way at what you're doing. But also you have to remember, you know, and remember the music you're going to play, the order that you're going to play it, the sequencing of it, and lyrics or words if you're going to sing those too. And they might not necessarily have the same rhythmic structure. So your brain is doing kind of two multitasky things there. But if you've also got dyspraxia, so you're constantly monitoring your your neurobiology in the process of playing. And that's a guitar challenge or challenge for a guitar player. But there's another thing that takes place with me as well. I filmed this in 2012. I find it a bit kind of awkward to watch, but in order for you to appreciate this challenge, I have to share it with you. Okay, it's very short, this little bit. It's yeah, no more than 2 minutes. Okay, but it will serve to illustrate a situation which will lead to me describing a solution. Okay, so when you watch this, just remember a solution's coming. Right? It's not just a kind of like a rainy day. Sunshine is going to come out. Okay, right. So here's on top of the dyspraxia, the other challenge. I haven't tried doing this before, pushing it against the wall. That actually seems to be alleviating it, as if pushing pressure on the hand makes them go uniform, and that's actually easier. For some reason, I don't know why, but that seems to have stopped it. Just making the fingers go flat and putting all my body weight against the palm of my hand seems to have done something. It seems to have made it a bit lighter. Oh, I can feel the pain subsiding. Oh, I tell you, that hurts. It's so scary as well, because when they lock out like that, the pain is excruciating. It really is. It shoots at my arm and across the back of my hand, and it gets these muscles. I don't know if I can show you properly. I can't point and hold the camera at the same time. But the back of the muscles, so with the index finger here along the back of that muscle, along the back of that one, where those veins are sticking up actually. You see there's a lot of a kind of vein thing here. There seem to be these high ridges, and that's where the tension is. It's in there. I don't know if that's a clue or useful, but fucking hell, it really hurts. Yeah, that is a bit uncomfortable. I do appreciate that. That particular spasm went on for quite some time. At that time, in 2012, I was having up to 4 or 5 of those spasms a day. Sometimes they would last 10 minutes, 15 minutes. There was one that lasted for more than 2 hours. And they weren't just, obviously, you could see they were very painful, right? But the pain wasn't just because of the physical pain or the distress of not being able to move, or the distress of not being able to have any conscious control over physicality. But it was also the never-endingness. Because when they started, I didn't know when they would stop. And along with that, there was also a fear of, I didn't know if it would stop. And I went to my GP about this. I was referred to the wrong specialist. That went back through the NHS loop again to get referred there. And it took a couple of years. And in 2014, I went to see a neurobiologist at Swindon Hospital. Had a couple of appointments with them. This very, very nice nurse had to spend some time tapping me all over with a little rubber hammer And I thought, I know people who would pay for this. But I showed them the video as well. I took the video along, and they were baffled because there's a phenomenon called a phenomenon called focal dystonia. And focal dystonia happens if a person, say for example, something repetitive like typing or playing an instrument. And if you can imagine that there are tendons at either end of like the finger that pull, when the tendon contracts, the finger moves. And what can happen is that the neurons get confused. And so both ends try to kind of send contradictory signals. So the tendon is trying to relax and tense simultaneously, and it ends up kind of going into a spasm. But I was having these in both hands and my feet as well. There was one time when I was driving round a roundabout and spasms happened in my hands at the same time. While I was driving slowly. It's a supermarket, just going into a supermarket. So thankfully I was going very slowly, but it was worrying. I was driving down a motorway one time and my right foot went into spasm while I was driving. And luckily I could, still control the vehicle. But it was a concern. And so they said, we're not sure about this because you're having this in a global sense rather than an isolated sense. And they said, we're going to do some tests and things, and we're exploring, here's a phrase you don't often hear, background Parkinson's isms. And when I went back again to see what their findings were, they found nothing. They couldn't understand it. And they said, all we can do is give you some epilepsy medication, and but only take them if it gets really bad. And that was the sum total of the investigation, which didn't seem very kind of useful to me. But around that time, there were a few documentaries being shown on TV and about the unconscious. And whenever there's anything like that, I always record it because there might be something in there that's useful for my neuroholistic therapy training classes. We watch videos of kind of hypnotherapists in action and anything that could kind of support or inform about the brain, the unconscious, and the workings of these things. So I recorded this program just to see if there was anything in there that could be useful or illustrative, for my classes. And there was this little kind of part of it towards the end. I'll show you it now because, it definitely kind of relates with this situation. See what you think of this. The documentary clip cannot be shown because of copyright issues. So I'll just describe it for a second, and then this will pick up from where it was me describing it if you had actually seen it. So a classical guitarist has a dystonia problem with his hands going into spasm and he can't play. They wired him up in a lab in London and looked at the patterning, what was taking place. And then they did a radical experiment. They got him to play, and while he was playing, every time a spasm appeared, they put an electrical pulse into a part of his brain to do with motor cortex. And each time they put the pulse in, it stopped the spasms from forming. And that gave me an idea. So the video is now going to continue as if you've just watched that clip. Okay? Right. That inclusion of that electrical pulse interrupted the spasms. And I watched that and I thought, that sounds very familiar. In NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, there's a technique that, or rather, there's a set of techniques really called pattern interrupts. Pattern interrupts, how to interrupt a pattern. And these techniques are usually kind of applied in things like if a person bites their fingernails or if a person smokes a cigarette, then you can apply these pattern interrupts, which kind of are inserted, if you like, into the beginning of a behavior. So behaviors, although we think of something, say like, I don't know, picking up an apple is just one movement, but it isn't. Your hand is doing this as it goes down towards the apple, then the fingers open, then the fingers grip, then you'll begin to move these muscles here as your hand lifts up, etc. And then it kind of, moves towards. You have to migrate that. You have to navigate the space. There's a lot going on just in the process, and even before the behavior begins, there has to be the stimulus of desiring the apple. Does it begin with a feeling, and then you have the idea, and then maybe see the image of an apple in your mind? Or is it that you have the image of the apple in your mind first, and then you say, I'd like an apple, then you have the feeling or the sensation or taste? Or is it the word that starts first, which then inspires the imagery and the taste and the sensation? So all those components of desire have a sequencing. And if you put the pattern interrupt technique in the middle of that sequencing, then you can interrupt the sequence. And if you interrupt the sequence, that interrupts the neural pathway. Then, of course, then you're interrupting the train of thought. And if you interrupt the train of thought, then the behavior of that train of thought never takes place. As a basic principle. Right. So there's one of these particular pattern interrupt techniques that I used to kind of quite respond to quite readily whenever anybody did them on me in classes. And so I thought, I wonder if that would work. So the next time I had one of these spasms begin, because I'd noticed that the feeling would come on, as it were. And as you noticed in that video, the shape of that spasm was kind of like this, right? Now, I'm not going to do that for too long. And the reason is, if I put my hand into that shape, it can actually kind of stimulate a spasm to begin. Right? So, for example, one day in 2013, I think it was, I was helping to hang a picture around someone's house. So I was holding the picture at the bottom, like this, in my hands in that shape. And just the act of holding this picture for, I don't know, a minute or so. Next thing I know, my hand went into a spasm, and it took more than an hour for it to stop, which kind of delayed the picture hanging by quite a lot. And I have like it's not just when the spasm stops, it's like, oh, everything's fine again. It had quite a powerful emotion effect. It takes me a bit of time to recover a sense of confidence and well-being again. It's almost like the foundations of one's kind of sense of self gets undermined. Yes. Anyway, another time that I would put my hands into that kind of shape is, of course, playing a guitar. Right? If you think of playing a guitar like a bar chord, a guitarist might put their hands across the guitar neck and do that. You notice I find that very hard because his finger doesn't want to do that. Right? It doesn't want to stay in that position. And I wasn't really aware of that when I was young, when I started to play guitar, but I did notice when I was about 15, 16, and I just started to play guitar, I used to find these bar chords particularly difficult. And I used to find the idea of doing a bar across the neck and then moving my fingers individually to play notes incredibly hard to do. And so, human beings tend to have what psychotherapists would call coping strategies. So I just started to play things that didn't involve that sort of style, which meant I never learnt how to do things like fast lead guitar shredding, for example. There are certain jazz pieces and things I just don't know how to play because my hands won't go, they don't like doing that. So I tend to play music that doesn't involve a lot of that kind of dexterity, which limits the scope of my playing, and it limits the range of things that I can write. But up until around 2012, when these spasms really started to kind of happen on a regular basis, it never really occurred to me that there was a problem. I can remember the first time one of these twitches, I used to think of them as twitches, really began to kind of make itself known in a painful way, just for a second, was in 1999. I was just playing around with a guitar, and my hand went, and it was like a bolt of pain shot up my arm, and I thought, whoa, what's that? And it faded quickly. So I thought, no, one off sort of thing. And then progressively over time, there was a period from about around 2001 until about 2008ish, when I didn't play guitar that much. So my hands didn't go into that shaping that often. So these spasms never really kind of started. As I started to play guitar more and more, then these spasms began, and as they started to get more and more kind of powerful, then it became increasingly challenging for me to deal with. Tricky stuff, very, very tricky stuff indeed. Now, yes, I had a go at doing this pattern interrupt thing. So, and I imagined that someone was doing it to me. So I was standing up, and I put myself into a very kind of light trance space. And then I just imagined that my old tutor was doing this technique on me. And the spasms stopped. And my arm just went calm again. And I thought, I can do this, right? About 2 days later, a couple of days later, I wrote a piece on a guitar, and I put bar chords in it deliberately, right? Just to see, is it possible to do this? I'm going to show you that in a second, right? When you watch this piece, if you follow it and track it enough, you can see there's a couple of times when I have like timing glitches, right? And you can see that but the time kind of becomes slightly hesitant, and in that moment, I'm either having a dyspraxic challenge or a spasm challenge, or both. And so someone said to me, you always look so serious when you play, intense, kind of. You never smile. Why don't you smile when you're playing? And I said, well, because I'm doing so much. I'm concentrating so much. I'm not just performing in it, like entertaining, and kind of just actually remembering lyrics and things is hard enough when you have an autistic memory. Better explain about that. Autism and memory. Neurotypical people generally find that they remember important things, and trivial things kind of, aren't necessarily remembered. Yeah. So there's this relationship between that which is remembered and the value of the thing itself. That's not the case with an autistic memory. As such, it's more random. So sometimes I remember important things, which is good. I remember trivial things, which is interesting, sometimes inconvenient. I forget trivial things, that's fine, but also forget important things. And the assignments of which is remembered and that which isn't seem to kind of be random, without any distinctive kind of pattern or potential of expectation. So I never know if I'm going to remember something that's important or not. And I also never know if I'm going to remember something that's trivial or not. So it's not easy to kind of manage memory. That's one thing. Playing with dyspraxia is hard because I'm constantly fighting with my neurology to make sure my hands are going to play a note at the right time, in the right place. And then if there's any kind of indication of spasm coming up, then I'm doing kind of therapeutic work on myself while I'm remembering the words, while I'm playing everything in time, and just actually trying to get the song to take place, let alone kind of smile to the world at the same time. So if you ever see me playing guitar and I look dead serious or earnest, I'm not being serious or earnest. I'm fighting with myself. I'm battling inside just to actually kind of get the experience to happen and to make it come out into the world. Yeah, it's like an Olympus challenge to me, just to actually play at all, let alone play well, or kind of do so in some kind of vibrant expression of joy. So yeah, so I do apologise sometimes if I look like a grumpy old git when I'm playing, but I'm really kind of trying to kind of deal with things. So anyway, yeah. So once I got this pattern interrupt thing, I thought, I'll have a go with something. So have a look at this, right? And yeah, see if you can spot the glitches. And now you have an idea of what's going on behind the scenes of the glitches, right? This is from 2014. Right. Did you see them? Did you see the glitches? Yeah, you may have done, and you may not have done, but I kind of noticed them. I know they're there. Yes. So, in this short little kind of video thing, you've seen how there's a particular, physical, neurological problem, and then a scientific solution, and then the application of a linguistic solution, and then a result. And so, when I kind of talk about the kind of therapeutic stuff I do, I don't just kind of do therapeutic things with people. And I don't just teach people to become therapists. I use this stuff on me as well. Like somebody said to me, you're an inspiring person. You have you're autistic and you have 2 master's degrees. And yeah, I've been accepted for another 2 as well. Um, and part of the reason that I've got those 2 master's degrees is I use these techniques on myself to be able to kind of retain memory and study as well, and to kind of write well. So I'm constantly testing some of these techniques and things on me. In my life, I kind of stopped smoking, 27, 28 years ago. I'm completely free from alcohol, and I use these techniques on myself to kind of adjust those things as well. So when I first encountered Michael Harrison, who taught me these things way back in about 1993, I thought, whoa, I won the lottery. Because I could see from his demonstration that he showed me in Bodmin, in Cornwall, that these tools could be used to be able to kind of get a sense of internal mastery. And that was something I'd been kind of looking at or looking for since my very early 20s. So, yeah, powerful things. When you can use language to encourage or stimulate the unconscious to adjust patterns so that those new patterns serve you well in the context that you're currently living in with whatever goals you have that you're aspiring to. It's a very, very useful thing indeed. And if any of you ever want to kind of find out more about this kind of thing or what you can do with it, you're very welcome to get in touch. But I just wanted to show you this with reference to the playing, in answer to the question, why do you always look so serious when you're playing? And now you know. Okay, take care. And next time you see me on Facebook and I'm playing something and it's even remotely pleasant, please let me know if you like it or not. All right, take care. Thank you. See you later. Bye.